I'm Rachel Monroe, 34 years old, and I'd been sitting in a stiff vinyl chair beside my son's hospital bed for 3 days straight. His bike was crushed. He hadn't opened his eyes since the accident. The nurses kept adjusting wires and tubes, but nothing changed. The stillness was unbearable. Then my phone buzzed, and it was my mother. Her voice sharp as ever, she said, "Don't forget your sister's birthday party tomorrow." And I remember just staring at the screen, wondering how she could still be thinking about cake and candles while Tyler lay fighting for his life. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to choose between family expectations and doing what's right for your child. I grew up in a white shingled house in a quiet neighborhood outside of Hartford, Connecticut. My mom, Carolyn, kept everything spotless, down to the labels in the pantry. She believed in order, image, and high standards, and she held on to them like scripture. From as early as I can remember, my little sister Lauren could do no wrong. Straight A's, piano trophies, charm that made people stop mid-conversation. She was everything my mother wanted. I wasn't rebellious. I got decent grades, played soccer, kept to myself, but I was never enough. If Lauren brought home an award, my effort was met with silence. If she had a recital, Mom invited the neighbors. When I had a game, she often forgot. My dad worked a lot auditing firms across 3 states, and when he was home, he tried to keep things balanced. "She just wants you to reach your potential," he'd say, softening Mom's sharp words. But her version of potential looked a lot like becoming Lauren. By the time I hit high school, I'd stopped competing. Instead, I picked up a camera, spent hours capturing quiet moments, shadows on the snow dogs at the shelter, worn-out boots by a back porch. Things that felt real. That's where I found a little space of my own. Then I met Mark in college. He was in engineering there on an Army scholarship. Honest, grounded, with a dry sense of humor and a way of seeing me like no one ever had. When we got engaged, Mom didn't even try to hide her disapproval. "Throwing your life away on a soldier," she muttered at Thanksgiving. Still, we married a simple ceremony under a big oak tree on his family's farm in Pennsylvania. His folks welcomed me like I was one of their own. I remember Sunday dinners full of laughing and messy dishes. And when our son Tyler was born a year later, all curls and wide green eyes, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could start fresh. Even Mom softened a little, though never without commentary. "Don't hold him so much," she'd say. "You'll spoil him." Or, "That pediatrician looks barely out of school." When Mark deployed twice, I leaned on my parents more than I liked. Each ride to the doctor, each dinner dropped off came with a price. Comments about my clutter, my part-time hours, my too soft parenting. I let it go for Tyler's sake. Then the knock came. 2 soldiers at my door, one holding a folded flag. After the funeral, I moved into a smaller place, took a job at the elementary school front office, and did my best to raise Tyler on my own. Financially, we managed, thanks to military benefits. But emotionally, I was scraping bottom, and Mom, in her way, tightened her grip. "You should move back in," she said. "He needs stability. You need supervision." I refused. She responded by buying Tyler things I couldn't afford, then saying, "See, Grandma can give you what Mommy can't." She booked outings on my weekends, blamed me when I said no. And through it all, Lauren's life played like a highlight reel. Polished kids' vacations in Italy, school fundraisers in pearls. At family dinners, Mom would beam, "Lauren's twins are already reading chapter books." Then she'd glance at Tyler. "How's math going for him again?" I kept showing up. For Tyler's sake. And somehow, through the noise and pressure, we carved out our own quiet joy. Backyard science experiments, museum field trips, Sunday pancakes. Even if we burned the first batch, I built a life for us, one that felt honest. Then one warm spring morning, Tyler asked to ride bikes with friends. I checked his helmet, reminded him to text when he got there, kissed his head and watched him pedal away. He looked back and waved. That was the last time I saw him conscious. By 11:30, my world had narrowed to a phone call, flashing lights, and a sprint through hospital corridors. And it was only the beginning. The call came just before noon. I was in the ICU waiting room, still wearing the clothes I'd had on when I followed the ambulance to the hospital. The receptionist had brought me a lukewarm coffee, but I hadn't touched it. When the phone in my pocket vibrated, I hoped it was news from one of the doctors. But it wasn't. It was my mother. I stepped into the hallway to answer just outside the glass doors that led to Tyler's room. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't ask how Tyler was doing, didn't ask if the surgery had gone well. "Your sister's birthday dinner is tomorrow," she said instead. "I need you to come early to help get things ready." I thought maybe she didn't understand. Maybe she hadn't heard how serious this was. So I told her again that Tyler hadn't woken up, that he was in critical condition, that the doctors were still watching the swelling in his brain. I know that she replied with a tone like, "I'd forgotten to pick up milk. But the nurses are handling everything now. You sitting there won't change anything. Vanessa's been planning this dinner for months." There was a pause just long enough for me to wonder if she'd realized how that sounded. She hadn't. "Tyler is in intensive care," I said. "He might not wake up. I'm not leaving." She exhaled like she was dealing with someone being difficult on purpose. "You're being dramatic, Rachel. You've always been like this." I didn't say anything. I just listened. And she kept going. "You've always made everything about you. I'm asking for one afternoon, that's all. You can come in the morning, help set up Smile for a few pictures, and be back before Tyler would even notice you were gone." Her voice was calm, rational, the way she sounded when she was most sure she was right. Then she added, "If you don't come, Rachel, I want you to understand there will be consequences. You've depended on our support for years, especially since Mark died. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect you to show up for your family." I looked back toward Tyler's room, where a nurse was gently checking his IV. Machines surrounded his bed, blinking and beeping, and my son didn't move. "No," I said. "I'm not coming." There was a silence on the line, then her voice turned cold. "Then don't expect any more support from us. The trust fund, the money we put aside for Tyler's education, that can all be reconsidered." I didn't answer right away. My hand tightened around the phone. I felt the pressure of the hallway's fluorescent lights, the hum of the vending machine down the corridor, the faint squeak of rubber soles on polished floors. Then I said, "You're right. It is my choice." I hung up. I opened my contacts, found her name, and deleted it from my phone. When I walked back into the room, Nurse Kelly was there. She looked up from Tyler's chart and gave me a soft smile. "Everything okay?" she asked. "No," I said, sitting back down beside my son, "but I think it will be." That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I stayed beside Tyler, listening to the rhythm of the machines, the soft whoosh of the ventilator. I held his hand and talked to him about the science museum trip we'd planned, about the robot kit waiting at home, about the silly jokes he used to tell at breakfast. Every so often a nurse would check in. I'd nod, say thank you, and go right back to talking. The next morning, Dr. Patel arrived early. "The swelling's gone down a bit more," he said after reviewing the latest scans. "We're going to start reducing the sedation. It'll take time, but we may try to remove the ventilator soon." I nodded, barely able to process it. As he left, my phone buzzed again, a text this time from Vanessa. "Mom says you're not coming today. I know Tyler is sick, but it's just a few hours. You could at least send a gift." I didn't reply. More texts followed, from Aunt Diane, from Cousin Steve, even Uncle Ron, who hadn't spoken to me since Mark's funeral. None of them asked how Tyler was doing, not one. By lunchtime, I'd had enough. I turned the phone off completely. My father called the hospital that afternoon. "How's he doing today?" he asked. "About the same," I said. "Still no change." But they're reducing the sedation. There was a pause on the line. Then he said, "Listen, I'm driving your mother and Vanessa to pick up the cake. She's still hoping you'll reconsider." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "No, Dad. I'm not leaving. My son is in a coma. I'm not leaving his side for a party." "You don't need to use that tone," he said. "You don't need to pretend this is reasonable," I replied. He sighed. "I'll try to stop by the hospital later." "Don't," I said. "Just don't." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Physical therapists came to move Tyler's arms and legs. Nurses checked vitals. I stayed by his side waiting. At one point, Dr. Patel pulled me aside. "Rachel," he said gently, "I know it's hard to think about yourself right now, but you've been here 4 days without a break. You need rest, food, a moment to breathe." "I'm fine," I told him. He gave a small nod. "I would probably do the same if it were my child, but please consider stepping out for 20 minutes, even a short walk. Your son needs you well." Not long after, Nurse Kelly returned with a firm look. "You're going to the cafeteria," she said. "I'll stay with him. Doctor's orders, 20 minutes, no arguments." So I went. I picked up a sandwich and sat near the window overlooking the parking lot. The world outside looked so normal. People walked to their cars, laughed, checked their phones. Somewhere across town, Vanessa's party was probably starting. It was the first time in my life I hadn't shown up for one of those events, and it was the first time I didn't feel guilty for it. Just as I finished eating, my phone rang again. Kelly's name flashed on the screen. "Rachel," she said quickly, "you need to come back. Now. Is he okay? Just get here." I ran. The elevator felt impossibly slow. I pressed the button again and again, willing it to move faster. When the doors opened, I rushed through the hallway, heart pounding. Inside the room, Kelly looked up. Her expression was hard to read. "His EEG patterns shifted," she said. "We've called Dr. Patel. It's too early to say for sure, but there's increased activity. It might mean he's waking up." I moved to his side and took his hand. "Tyler," I whispered, "it's Mom. I'm here." Nothing. Dr. Patel arrived minutes later, scanning the monitors, checking Tyler's reflexes. "This is promising," he said. "We'll reduce the sedation further tonight. If he continues to respond, we may see more signs of consciousness." I stayed by his side, watching every small movement, every breath. And as the evening crept in, I thought of the dinner party happening without me. I pictured the polished silverware, the folded napkins, the polite smiles, and I thought about Tyler, still here, still fighting, still mine. The machines kept their rhythm, the lights dimmed. Nurse Kelly whispered from the doorway, "It's starting. He's coming back to you." The beeping in Tyler's room hadn't changed, but everything else had. Dr. Patel had left instructions to decrease the sedation slowly. Nurse Kelly dimmed the lights and checked his monitors again. I sat in the same chair I'd occupied for days, fingers wrapped gently around Tyler's hand, eyes fixed on the soft rise and fall of his chest. Nothing dramatic happened, but the air felt different, like something had shifted just slightly off its axis. Around 8:30, I noticed his fingers twitch. I leaned forward. "Tyler," I said quietly. Kelly came over immediately. She checked the monitors. "Heart rate's up a little," she said. "That's good." Then I saw it. His brow furrowed just for a moment. My chest tightened. "Sweetheart, it's Mom. I'm right here." There was no response. His face relaxed again, still and quiet. Dr. Patel arrived not long after. He ran a few checks, pupil response reflexes, the same routine I'd watched every day since we got here. But this time he lingered. "There's measurable progress," he said. "It's early, but it's encouraging. We'll keep monitoring. Let's see what happens overnight." The nurses continued their rounds. Kelly offered to stay with him again so I could rest, but I didn't want to miss anything. I sat there, hands clasped, eyes watching for any sign. And then just before midnight, Tyler's eyelids fluttered. They didn't stay open, just a flicker. But it was enough. I reached for his hand again. "You're safe," I whispered. "You're okay. You're in the hospital, but I'm here." His fingers tightened just slightly around mine. Kelly saw it too. She called for Marcus, the night nurse, and paged Dr. Patel again. By the time the doctor returned, Tyler had shown more signs. Eye movement, a squeeze of the hand, a few shallow breaths. The ventilator didn't need to assist. They didn't remove the tube yet. Dr. Patel explained that we had to be careful. But every hour that passed, Tyler became more responsive. It wasn't like waking from sleep. It was slow, uneven. He drifted in and out, sometimes alert, sometimes too tired to open his eyes. But when he was awake, he followed voices. He moved on command. He looked at me. By morning, he was stable enough for them to begin preparing for extubation. He couldn't speak, not yet. But when I told him I'd stayed by his side the whole time, he gave the faintest nod, and that was enough. They removed the ventilator around mid-morning. Tyler winced a little throat raw, but his first word was clear. "Water." His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I handed him a straw and guided the cup carefully. He sipped, then leaned back into the pillow, eyes closed. Then he opened them again and whispered, "Hungry." I laughed a little, wiping my eyes. The nurse smiled from the foot of the bed. "We'll start slow," she said gently. "Clear liquids for now." Tyler rested through the afternoon. I stayed close, helping where I could, answering questions the doctors asked when he was alert enough to respond. Around dinner time, the door opened without a knock. My mother stepped in, followed closely by Vanessa. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there, the water cup still in my hand. "There you are," my mother said. "We've been trying to reach you for hours." I didn't explain. I just said, "He woke up last night." Her eyes flicked to the bed. "Hello, Tyler," she said, her voice shifting to that warm tone she used at church luncheons and holiday photos. "You gave us all quite a scare." Then she looked at me. "We need to talk." "Outside." "I'm not leaving him," I said. Tyler's voice was faint. "It's okay, Mom. I'm okay." I nodded, brushing his hair back, then stepped just far enough into the hallway so I could still see him through the glass. My mother wasted no time. "Your behavior yesterday was unacceptable," she began. "Vanessa's birthday was ruined. Everyone asked where you were. It was embarrassing." I didn't react. I just watched Tyler through the window, his eyes slowly closing again. "He was in a coma," I said quietly. "And now he's awake," she replied. "Which means all that drama about not being able to leave his side was just that drama." Vanessa spoke next. "We understand you were worried, but family doesn't disappear in a crisis. We even had to reschedule the photographer. We were all waiting for the family portrait." I turned to face them fully. "My son almost died. And you're talking about a photographer." My mother's tone sharpened. "The doctors were handling everything. Your presence wasn't medically necessary." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just said. He opened his eyes and saw me, his mother. Where I said I'd be. Not at a party, not in a photo. Her mouth tightened. "Rachel Monroe, don't take that tone with me. After everything we've done for you, for Tyler, this is the thanks we get. The disrespect." I looked at her. "What exactly have you done for us, besides criticize my choices, question my parenting, and use money as a threat?" Vanessa gasped. My mother's voice turned cold. "We've supported you financially, the trust fund, the inheritance. Don't forget what you're walking away from." I didn't flinch. "I haven't forgotten. I just don't need it anymore." She stepped toward the room. "I want to see my grandson." "You can see him," I said. "One at a time. 5 minutes. Be calm. Be kind. or you won't see him again." "You don't get to dictate, I do," I said. "I'm his mother, and right now this is what he needs." There was a long pause. Then she adjusted her purse strap and walked inside. I stood at the door watching. She put on her warm smile again, sat beside the bed, and patted Tyler's hand. "You're so brave," she said softly. "We've all been so worried." He didn't say much, just nodded, looked tired. After 5 minutes, I stepped in. "He needs rest." She stood gathering her things. "I've hardly had a moment with him. You can visit again tomorrow, if he's feeling up to it." She left the room without another word. Vanessa entered next. She tried to keep things light, showing Tyler a few pictures of his cousins on her phone. Promised they'd visit soon. He smiled politely, then looked back at me when she was gone. "Were you fighting about the party?" he asked, his voice still weak. I sat down beside him. "We had a disagreement," I said. "Grandma wanted me to go to Aunt Vanessa's birthday dinner. I told her I needed to be here." He looked at me for a moment. "You stayed the whole time, every minute." His voice was soft but sure. "You were right to stay." I rested my hand gently over his. The machines hummed around us, steady and quiet. Tyler's room had settled into a familiar rhythm, monitors blinking in quiet patterns, nurses moving softly, the steady click of a clipboard or a rolling tray, and Tyler propped slightly upright now, drifting in and out of sleep. It was the second morning since he woke. Dr. Patel came in around 8. He checked Tyler's reflexes again, asked a few short questions. Tyler answered in a hoarse whisper, slow but clear. "He's doing well," the doctor said. "All signs point in the right direction. Let's keep easing him back into things." Tyler reached for my hand as Dr. Patel left. His fingers were still weak, but they found mine. "You look tired," he whispered. "I'm all right," I told him, smoothing his blanket. "You're the one doing all the hard work." He gave a faint smile, then closed his eyes again. The nurse reminded me to get some rest. I promised her I would, but I didn't move. Around noon, I stepped out for a few minutes, just long enough to wash my face and change clothes in the family room down the hall. When I came back, Tyler was awake, watching cartoons with the volume low. I sat back in the chair beside him. A few minutes passed before he asked, "Did Grandma come again?" I paused before answering. "She did. Yesterday. Just for a little while." He didn't say anything right away. His eyes stayed on the TV. "She seemed mad," he finally said. I reached for the remote and turned down the volume a little more. "She was upset that I missed Aunt Vanessa's birthday dinner. But we're okay. Everything's okay." Tyler didn't press. He just nodded and shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. The therapist came in that afternoon to help him sit up a little straighter. He worked hard through the discomfort, following each small instruction without complaint. "Looks like you've got a stubborn one," the therapist said, smiling at me. "He gets it honest," I replied. Later that evening, the hospital chaplain stopped by. He was an older man with kind eyes and a quiet voice. He'd visited once before, but I hadn't been in the room that time. This time I was. He pulled up a chair. "Would you like to talk?" I glanced at Tyler, who had drifted off again. Then I nodded. We stepped out into the hallway just beyond the nurse's station. He waited until we were seated before speaking again. "I hear your son's doing better," he said gently. I nodded. "He's trying." The chaplain paused, watching my face. "And how are you holding up?" I didn't answer at first. Then I said I told my mother not to come if she couldn't respect the rules. She's upset. He didn't respond right away. He just waited. "She said she'd cut off the trust fund," I continued. "Said I was choosing sides." "Sounds like it wasn't the first time," he said. I shook my head. "It's been this way most of my life." He rested his hands on his knees. "Crisis has a way of shining a light on what's already there." I looked away toward the far end of the hallway where a cart rolled slowly by. "I just keep wondering," I said, Am I hurting Tyler by making things worse with her? He doesn't know about the fight, not really, but what happens later, college, inheritance, family holidays. What if I'm cutting him off from all of that? The chaplain tilted his head slightly. That's a question only you can answer. But from what I've seen, real support doesn't come with strings. I didn't respond. Love doesn't demand compliance, he said softer now. It offers help without expecting control in return. We sat in silence for a while. When I got back to Tyler's room, he was awake again. The nurse had just finished checking his vitals. "You good, buddy?" I asked, stepping in quietly. He gave a tired nod. That night I tried to sleep in the family room. The nurse had convinced me to stretch out on the sofa for at least a couple of hours. I set my phone face down on the armrest beside me. But I couldn't stop thinking. I thought about the trust fund, the birthday dinners, the endless loop of "you owe us," and "you need to do better." I thought about all the times I'd said nothing, just gone along, and I thought about what would have happened if I had left Tyler that night. Around 3 a.m, I got up and returned to his room. He was sleeping, face relaxed, hands still. I pulled the chair close and settled in. The next morning, my father stopped by. He came alone, held a paper bag with a muffin and coffee, didn't ask to come in, just stood at the doorway waiting. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied. He stepped inside, set the bag down gently on the table. "I know things got heated," he said. I waited. "Your mother feels," he began, then stopped. "She thinks you've shut her out. She threatened to pull Tyler's college fund," I said, "because I wouldn't come to dinner." He rubbed his hand over his jaw. "She's upset." "She always is," I said, "when she doesn't get her way." He didn't argue. I just wanted to say he continued, "I get it. Maybe not all of it, but I get enough to understand why you did what you did." I nodded. He glanced over at Tyler. "He looks better. He's getting there." He picked up the coffee again. "I won't stay. Just wanted to bring you something warm." I followed him to the door. He paused before leaving. "I'll check on you later," he said. I watched him walk down the hallway, shoulders a little heavier than I remembered. Back in the room, Tyler stirred. "Was that Grandpa?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "He brought muffins." He gave a tiny smile. "Did he bring the big blueberry kind?" He did. Tyler leaned back on the pillows, his voice sleepy. "Tell him thanks. I will." As he drifted off again, I looked out the window past the parking lot and the morning light creeping across the sky. There were decisions ahead, hard ones. But for the first time, I felt like I had the strength to make them. Tyler's voice had grown a little stronger each day. Not much, just a few more words at a time, a little less strain in his throat. We'd gotten to the point where he could sit up with help and eat soft food without too much discomfort. The nurses called it good progress. I still hadn't turned my phone back on. Everything I needed was in that room. His voice, his heartbeat, his eyes slowly tracking mine across the pillow. It was the 5th morning since he woke when Vanessa's husband called the nurses' station. They transferred him to the visitor phone near the ICU desk. One of the nurses waved me over with a cautious look. "It's your brother-in-law," she said. "Wants to speak with you directly." I stepped out into the hallway and picked up the receiver. Rachel Richard began, without even a hello. "This has gone far enough. Your sister's been in tears. Your mother's had one of her migraines. You've turned a small family disagreement into this whole ordeal." I didn't speak. I let him finish. "You've really hurt a lot of people," he added. "And for what?" "My son is in the hospital," I said. "No one's saying Tyler isn't important," he said quickly. "But the way you've handled this, well, you know your mother. She's not used to this kind of defiance. And Vanessa, it was her birthday. That meant something." I stepped further down the hallway so I wouldn't be overheard. "Richard," I said, keeping my voice low. "Tyler was in a coma. He had a brain injury. He still might have long-term effects we don't even understand yet. And you're telling me I should have come to a birthday party? I'm saying. He replied that you didn't need to cut everyone off the way you did. Family requires compromise. I held the phone tighter. So, you think I should have left my son in a hospital bed to decorate place cards and smile for photos? That's not what I said, he muttered. No, then what would have satisfied everyone? An hour 2. Just enough to prove I still know my place. There was silence on the line. Don't call again unless you're asking how Tyler is doing, I said, and tell my sister she can stop sending gifts through the nurses. I hung up. Then I stood there for a moment watching through the glass. Tyler was half asleep again, one hand resting on his chest, eye lines coiled nearby like they'd always belonged there. Back in the room, Nurse Kelly was adjusting his monitor. She glanced at me. Everything okay? Family stuff, I said. She gave a small nod. You wouldn't believe the things we hear in here. That night she sent me to the cafeteria again. You need a full meal, she insisted. Not crackers from the nurse's drawer. 20 minutes, then come back. I went. It was just after 5. The cafeteria was nearly empty. I sat by the window with soup and a sandwich watching the sky shift to that dull pink gray that comes before rain. Down below, someone was walking toward the parking garage with a birthday balloon tied to their wrist. I checked the time. If things had gone differently, I might have been back at my mother's house by now, folding napkins, listening to Vanessa describe the color theme she'd chosen for the party, laughing in the right places. Instead, I was here, in a borrowed sweatshirt, watching a storm build in the distance. The phone in my pocket buzzed. It was the ICU desk. Rachel Kelly said you need to come back. Now. I didn't ask anything. I was already on my feet. The elevator took too long. I kept pressing the button, willing it to move faster. When it finally opened, I stepped into the hallway, shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Outside Tyler's room, Kelly met me. He's showing new changes, she said quickly. Dr. Patel's already on his way. I looked at the monitors. The numbers weren't dropping, they were shifting. His breathing was stronger. The EEG looked different faster. He's trying to come back to us, she said. I went to him and took his hand. Tyler, I whispered, it's Mom. You're safe. Just follow my voice. His brow twitched. His hand moved. He opened his eyes. They didn't track right away, but they were open, really open. I leaned in closer. Can you see me? He blinked, then blinked again. The doctor arrived moments later, checked his responses, spoke calmly, clearly. Tyler followed his voice. By nightfall, they removed the oxygen line completely. His first full sentence, slow and raspy, was, "Can I go home yet?" I laughed and wiped my face with the back of my hand. Not quite yet, I told him, but we're closer. Around 9 o'clock, as the new night nurse came in, Tyler looked up at me and said, "I'm really glad you didn't leave." "I told you I wouldn't," I said. He nodded and squeezed my hand. Later that night, long after he'd fallen back asleep, I walked out to the family lounge. I needed a moment to breathe. The vending machine hummed softly. A small TV played the news with the sound turned off. I sat on the couch and stared out the dark window. Then slowly I reached into my pocket. I turned the phone back on. Within minutes, the texts came in dozens of them. Missed calls, voicemails. None of them asked how Tyler was doing. Not one. I turned the phone back off. Then I went back to his room, pulled up the chair, and held his hand until morning. We stayed 3 more nights before they finally discharged him. Tyler was still wobbly on his feet, but the physical therapist had cleared him with a walker and a list of exercises to do at home. I picked up his prescriptions at the hospital pharmacy and packed up the last of his things while he sat quietly, legs swinging over the edge of the bed. "You ready?" I asked, brushing his hair back. He nodded. A nurse brought a wheelchair, and we headed down the long hallway toward the front entrance. Every step away from that room felt like something closing behind us, and something else quietly opening. Outside, the weather had turned crisp. There was the sharp smell of damp leaves and car exhaust. I helped Tyler into the passenger seat, buckled him in carefully, then loaded his bag into the back. We drove in silence for most of the way. About 10 minutes from the house, he finally spoke. "Can I sleep in my bed tonight?" "You sure can." He looked out the window. "Even if I wake up a lot, I'll be right down the hall." When we got home, I eased him through the door, one arm around his waist, and guided him to the couch. He sat heavily, like he hadn't realized how tired he still was. I brought him water, turned on a movie, and started a load of laundry. By dinner time, he'd dozed off again. It was after 8 when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my mother standing on the porch, perfectly put together like she'd come straight from a lunch meeting. She held a white envelope in one hand and a tightly rolled newspaper in the other. "I came to check on my grandson," she said. "You could have called," I replied. "I assumed your phone was still off." I didn't answer. She stepped forward, trying to look past me into the house. "Is he awake?" "No, he's resting." She held out the envelope. "This is the updated trust paperwork. I've had the funds moved into a managed account. You'll no longer have direct access." I took it and placed it on the console table without opening it. "I hope you understand," she said. "I do," I replied. She hesitated, then said, "Vanessa's very hurt. She'll survive." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "You think you're making some kind of stand, Rachel, but all you're doing is isolating yourself." I didn't respond. Her gaze softened a bit. "I know you're tired, but that doesn't excuse everything." I crossed my arms. "Good night, Mom. I'm still his grandmother. You always will be." I started to close the door. She stepped back, adjusting the sleeve of her coat. "You were never good at seeing the bigger picture." Then she turned and walked away. I locked the door and leaned against it, listening to the silence of the house. In the morning, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope unopened beside my coffee. Tyler was still asleep. I stared at the paperwork for a long time, then slid it into a drawer and shut it. The next day, I called a lawyer. She was recommended by one of the nurses at the hospital, someone who'd gone through something similar with her own family. We met in her office on a Thursday morning. I brought the trust documents and a folder of my own notes. She read through them quietly, flipping pages, making a few marks. When she looked up, her face was calm. "You've got options," she said, "but we'll need to move carefully. I want to make sure Tyler's future is secure," I told her, "but I also want to make sure no one can ever use money as a leash again." She nodded. "Then let's start by freezing the current access points." I signed the forms she prepared. Notarized copies, letters of intent, power of attorney updates. By the time I left, I felt something I hadn't in weeks, steady. Back home, I told Tyler we were going to take things slow. He could rest as much as he wanted. We'd do home tutoring for a while. No rush. That night, I ordered a pizza. We watched a space documentary in our pajamas, and for the first time in a long time, we laughed without looking over our shoulders. The next weekend, my dad called. "I'm not supposed to say anything he started, but I think your mother's planning to challenge what you did." "She can try," I said. "She's angry," he added, "but I think she's also scared of losing control." "I'm not fighting with her," I said. "I'm just done surrendering." There was a pause. "I'll stop by this week," he said. "Just me." "Okay." On Monday morning, I took down the framed family portrait in the hallway. The one where everyone's dressed in shades of beige and smiling too wide. I replaced it with a photo Tyler had taken last fall, a close-up of a squirrel holding a peanut on our back deck. It made me smile every time I walked past it. It started with a knock, not hurried, not tentative, just firm enough to announce herself. I opened the door to find my mother on the porch again, dressed in a dark gray coat and holding a small wicker basket lined with linen. Inside, I could see wrapped muffins and a folded note. "I brought something for Tyler," she said. "He's resting," I replied. She didn't step forward this time. Her eyes moved past me toward the hallway, then settled back on mine. "Rachel, I think it's time we stop this." I let the silence hang for a moment, then said, "Stopped what exactly?" She shifted the basket in her hands. "This distance, this tension." I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door gently closed behind me. "We can talk out here," I said. She blinked once. "Is that really necessary?" "I think so." She looked down at the basket, then back up. "Your sister's children are wondering why they haven't seen Tyler, and Vanessa's still very upset. You didn't even respond to her last message." "I haven't read it," I said. Her lips pressed together. "I want to make things right," she added, quieter now. "But you've gone too far." I waited. "You changed the trust," she said. "You removed me from every decision, and you involved a lawyer." "Yes," she exhaled. "That money was intended to provide stability, and it will," I said. "For Tyler. But not for you." I didn't answer. She held the basket out. "At least let him have these." I took it carefully and set it down on the porch railing. "He'll have them later," I said. Her shoulders lifted slightly, like she was preparing for something bigger. "Rachel, this isn't how families are supposed to operate." "No," I said. "It's how ours has operated for too long." Her gaze sharpened. "I have done everything for you, and now I'm doing what's best for my son." She was quiet for a long time, then slowly she turned and walked back down the steps. I stood there until she reached her car. She didn't look back. Inside, I placed the muffins on the counter and washed my hands. Tyler was sitting up in bed with a book in his lap when I came in. "Who was that?" he asked. "Grandma." "Oh." "She dropped off muffins." He tilted his head. "Did she stay?" "No." He looked back down at his book. "Okay." That evening, I logged into the trust account online. The new advisor had already moved things into the revised structure. Tyler's name was now listed first. I had full access and control, but the oversight board was made up of third-party professionals, not family. Everything was clean, simple, documented. I sent copies to the lawyer for her records. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. It was from my mother's attorney. I opened it at the kitchen table with Tyler playing Legos nearby. The language was formal, questioning my capacity to manage Tyler's finances alone, citing concern for emotional impairment due to recent stress. A polite challenge veiled as concern. I read it twice, then folded it and placed it in a folder marked Legal. That afternoon, I returned to the lawyer's office. She wasn't surprised. "We'll respond appropriately," she said. "But you're in the clear. Her name's not on anything now. The courts would see this for what it is." I nodded. "Are you sure you're up for this?" she asked. "I am." That weekend, Tyler and I walked to the local park. He was slow but steady, and we took breaks on the benches every few blocks. He pointed out birds' dogs, oddly shaped clouds. By the time we reached the swings, he was grinning. A woman nearby, someone I recognized from the school front office, waved. "He's looking better," she said, "getting stronger every day." Tyler climbed onto the lowest swing and began pushing gently with his feet. "He'll be back at school next semester. That's the plan." She smiled. "Good to hear." I watched Tyler for a long time after she left. Just watched him move free, focused, safe. That night, as I folded laundry in the living room, the landline rang. It was my father. "Your mother's calmed down a bit," he said. "Good. She asked me to talk to you about... She wants to drop the legal challenge, but she'd like to see Tyler, supervised." I didn't respond right away. "She says she's willing to accept boundaries." I folded a shirt, then said, "I'll think about it." "That's fair. I'm not angry," I said, "but I won't go backward." "I know," he said, softly. The next day I drafted a letter not legal, just personal, outlining what visits could look like, limited to 1 hour in public settings with no discussion of finances or family grievances. Any breach would end future visits. I mailed it. 2 weeks passed before I heard back. A short reply, accepting the terms. Our first meeting was scheduled for a Saturday at the Botanical Garden. Tyler and I arrived early. He wore his favorite blue hoodie. I packed a few snacks and water. She showed up on time. Quiet, reserved. The visit was simple. A slow walk through the rose garden, small talk about school, the weather, his favorite movies. No tension, no comments, no pushing. When we said goodbye, she gave him a small wave. Not a hug, not a gift. Just a wave. In the car on the way home, Tyler said, "That wasn't bad." "No," I said, "it wasn't." He leaned his head against the window and closed his eyes. The next few months passed quietly like snow settling after a storm. Tyler was sleeping better. He still had nightmares sometimes, but they didn't hold him as long. I'd hear him stir Pat across the hall and curl up beside me without saying a word. Then by morning, he'd be back in his own bed again, like nothing ever happened. His appetite came back slowly. He started drawing again, 2 strange little creatures with wide eyes and long arms. One day I asked him what they were. He shrugged and said, "Things I used to dream about. But they don't scare me anymore." The house felt different now, not because of any big change, just the small things. I started leaving my phone ringer on again. I opened the windows when the weather was good. I played the piano in the evenings, and sometimes Tyler would sit nearby and hum along off-key and happy. The envelope with the trust paperwork stayed in the drawer unopened. I didn't need to look at it anymore. The choices had already been made. And my mother, she kept her distance mostly. There were no more letters from lawyers, just short notes now and then asking if she could see him. I stuck to our schedule. Every other Saturday at a public place, no surprises. She never pushed it. My father stopped by more often. He'd bring groceries or fix things around the house, small ways of showing up. We didn't talk much about the past, but one afternoon while repairing a loose cabinet hinge, he looked up and said, "You did the right thing." I nodded, not needing him to explain what he meant. One evening in late spring, Tyler and I sat on the back porch watching fireflies blink across the yard. He leaned into my side and said, "I think I like our family better now." I smiled. "Me too." He turned to me. "Even if it's smaller." "It's not smaller," I said. "It's just real." We sat there until the light faded, the air thick with the smell of grass and blooming jasmine. And I thought about how long it took to get here. Not just the months, but the years of silence, the weight of expectation, the way I used to shrink myself just to keep peace. All of that had cracked wide open when I chose to stand still instead of stepping back. Justice doesn't always look like a courtroom or a grand apology. Sometimes it's just a mother sitting beside her son on a quiet night, knowing that no one else gets to decide what peace looks like in their home. If there's anything I've learned, it's that protecting someone you love doesn't always mean holding them close. Sometimes it means standing between them and the people who were supposed to love them better, and choosing to love them differently, more gently, more honestly. So if you've ever had to draw a line, not out of anger, but out of love, I hope you know you're not alone. And if this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share your own story or just take a quiet moment to reflect. And if you would like to hear more stories like this, you're always welcome here.